So, how can a simple 2-minute timer inside an app lead to a massive civil rights lawsuit? Well, that's exactly what's happening with Uber. We're going to break down how this one tiny feature has sparked a huge debate about disability, technology, and the future of our laws. And this quote, wow, it comes straight from the Department of Justice's lawsuit against Uber, and it really just cuts right to the heart of this. This isn't just about a few extra dollars on a ride. It's about dignity, and it's about equal access for everyone. 2 minutes. That's the grace period Uber gives you to get into the car before the meter starts running and you get charged extra. For most of us, that's no big deal, right? But what if it's not enough time? What if you physically can't move that fast?
So let's start with the policy itself and really dig into how this 2-minute window creates a very real and very frustrating problem for a lot of people with disabilities. Okay, so at the center of this whole thing is what Uber calls its wait time fee. It's been around since 2016. Basically, 2 minutes after your driver pulls up, a clock starts ticking, and it doesn't stop until that car is actually on the move. So here's where the problem comes in. Just imagine you use a wheelchair. You are right there on the curb ready to go when the car arrives, but it takes time to get in, to fold up the chair and get it stored in the car. That whole process just naturally takes more than 2 minutes. So you end up getting charged an extra fee, not because you were late, but simply because of the time it takes to manage your disability.
Okay, so the first thing a lot of people ask is, well, can't the driver just see what's happening and waive the fee? You'd think that would be the simple solution, right? But it's not that easy. And this comment from a driver says it all. The system is totally automated. The app starts the clock, and the driver has zero control over it. They can't turn it off. And that's the key. It makes this a systemic, company-wide policy, not just a choice made by one driver.
And because this was a systemic issue, and not just a few random incidents, well, that's exactly when the U.S. government decided it was time to step in.
So to really get the full picture, you kind of have to look at the timeline. Way back in 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, is signed into law to prevent this kind of discrimination. Then, fast forward to 2016, Uber rolls out this wait time fee. And then in 2021, the Department of Justice officially sues them, basically saying that this new policy from 2016 is a violation of that original 1990 law.
So what's the government's argument? Well, they're saying this policy breaks a part of the ADA called Title III, which covers public spaces and transportation. They're not going after the drivers, they're going after Uber, the company. The DOJ says Uber failed to make reasonable modifications, a simple change to its rules, and because of that, it ended up charging people a penalty just for being disabled.
And here's the DOJ basically laying out their mission. They're not just taking on Uber. They're sending a clear message to the entire industry. If your business is transportation, you have to provide equal access. It's not optional.
Now, this is where the whole case gets really, really interesting, because it all comes down to one fundamental and surprisingly tricky question about what Uber actually is.
So, is Uber a tech company that just runs an app connecting people? Or is it a transportation company that actually provides rides? I know it sounds like semantics, but how the court answers that one question completely changes what Uber is responsible for under the law.
So here are the two sides of the argument laid out plain and simple. Uber has always said, hey, we're just a technology platform. Our only job under the ADA is to make sure the app itself is accessible. But the DOJ is saying, no way. You're a private provider of transportation. You're in the business of moving people from point A to point B, and that means you have to play by the same rules as taxis, buses, and shuttles.
And this fight isn't just about Uber, It's part of a much bigger challenge we're all facing. How do you apply laws that were written before the internet even existed to our modern digital world?
I mean, think about it. When the ADA was written in 1990, there was no World Wide Web as we know it. The law was designed for the physical world, things like wheelchair ramps and accessible bathrooms. It has literally nothing to say about software, websites, or apps on your phone. And because the law is so old, courts all over the country are divided on how to interpret it. It's called a circuit split. Some courts say, yep, the ADA applies to websites full stop. But other courts say an app or a website is only covered if it has a direct connection, what they call a nexus, to a physical place. This Uber case just so happens to be in a circuit that requires that nexus, which makes it a really, really important test case.
And whatever happens here won't just impact how you get a ride. The legal precedent that gets set could send massive shockwaves across the entire sharing economy.
Think about it. All these companies, Airbnb, Lyft, Lime, Zipcar, they all run on the same basic model, a digital app that connects you to a service in the real world. You can bet they are all watching this lawsuit very, very closely. The decision here could totally redefine their responsibilities under the ADA too.
So with all that's at stake, why is this specific lawsuit being seen as the potential game changer, the one that could finally settle some of these big questions?
Well, there are three really big reasons. First, previous lawsuits were filed by regular users, and when you sign up for Uber, you agree to handle disputes in private arbitration, not open court. But the DOJ isn't a user, so they can't be forced into that. Second, this case targets the automatic company policy, so Uber can't just blame it on individual drivers. And finally, the DOJ isn't looking for a quick cash settlement. Their goal is to set a legal precedent, a rule that applies to everyone going forward.
So to sum it all up, Uber's automatic 2-minute fee can end up penalizing riders with disabilities. The government says that's discrimination under the ADA. The whole case really boils down to this one question: is Uber a tech company or a transportation company? And the answer could change the rules of the road for the entire digital economy.
You know, this case just brings up such a fundamental challenge for our time. Our laws were written for an analog world, and they're really struggling to keep up with a digital reality that no one could have predicted. And it leaves all of us with a pretty big question to think about. As technology moves faster and faster, how do we make sure our civil rights and the basic idea of equal access don't get left behind?